All right, y'all. This perpetual soup thing has gotten pretty popular. So Julia Wild here and I, my kitchen wench, would like to show you ours. Now, there's a lot of stuff floating on the top. I studied medieval history in school. I got a degree in it and everything. And my topic of study was primarily medieval cooking. So I thought I would show you how I keep mine up. Now, I'm not going to add anything. I'm going to talk you through it. But this is what it looks like. Now, a traditional pot-au-feu would be made with probably mostly beef. But when you're talking about the perpetual soup from the medieval sort of time period, you're talking about the pot that was kept on the stove, that everything was just thrown in because you had to eat what you could. So, in here, I threw leftovers from last night. I made some blueberry jalapeno chicken legs, and there were some extras, so those are in there cooking this morning, and some corn on the cob was in there, so I'm really cooking that. And I'm going to leave this stuff in here to cook all today. It was in there all night, and I've turned it up, and it's, you can see all the little garlic pieces floating, and there's some onions. There's all kinds of stuff in here, because yesterday I put in a bunch of little potatoes and a bunch of green beans. You saw a couple of green beans that I missed scooping out last night. And I let those cook, and I scooped those out last night. We had those with our chicken for dinner. But nobody in my house will eat leftover chicken. So I thought, oh, that'll flavor my soup. And you can see how dark this stock is. And then the day before, I didn't really want to eat soup. So, and we don't eat, nobody eats soup every day, right? So I see a lot of these videos and everybody's eating soup every day. And I'm like, holy crap, why are you eating soup every day? Even in medieval times, people didn't have soup every single day. Sometimes you wouldn't have been able to gather, forage, collect, purchase what you wanted to eat, right? And so you had some days where you went hungry. So, whoops. So you might, I made a mess on my wallet. Right back there. So you might gather up a few things. And she's on high right now. Getting hung up for the day. You might gather up some things. You might have some dried herbs that you throw in there. You might have some veggies that you were able to gather on a walk, or a few herbs that were fresh. Whatever you have, throw it in there for seasoning. You need days where you're seasoning the pot, where the things you put in the pot are just for flavor, just for taste. So, don't forget to throw in herb scraps, veggie scraps. You can strain those back out, but they add a great deal of flavor and nutrition. Anyway, every day, give your pot-au-feu some love. And you can take the broth out and cook with it in a pot. Other things, you can use it to cook rice. I don't cook grains in my pot. I take the broth that I want, the stock, out of the pot and put it in another pot and cook with it. If I want to make rice, if I boil noodles, I don't necessarily want all the starch in my pot. And even things like beans and lentils, if you don't want to cook them in your pot, just take the broth or the stock that you need to use and put it out. Take it out. You're going to need to mix some of it with water anyway, because if you notice, it's very fat rich. And it's a thicker, kind of a thick broth, right? A thick stock. And you don't want that to be the only thing you're cooking in. You need some water when you want to cook on the stove. So you take a little bit of this, you take a little water, and you want to make sure you're adding filtered water to this. You know, when you re-up your water supply, make sure you're adding filtered water. It will help the flavor, it will help quality, it will not help the mess on your back wall. Have a good day. Okay, guys, back to the pot-au-feu. So, you can see that from the chicken and the corn where it was really, really full yesterday, I strained it. Actually, I just like scooped everything out. And then it has cooked down this much overnight. So it's more than half. So we're going to replenish the water. And then I found these smoked ham shanks, $1.89. Unreal. So these are going to go in there. And I've got a bunch of herbs and spices here. Please don't mind my blue fingernails. I've been dealing with 50 pounds of blueberries recently. In here we've got all kinds of things. I've got turmeric, paprika, there's salt and pepper, some thyme, some oregano, there's a little bit of sage, there's some, there's even a little bit of Nashville hot, that little ball of stuff right there is Nashville hot chicken seasoning, just because it's got all kinds of stuff in there. There's garlic powder, and then I have a lot of bay leaves. Bay leaves help to cut the fat in the meat, or from the meat into the broth. So it helps make it a little bit less, I don't know, fatty, sticky in the mouth, and a little more unctuous and really, you know, like creamy in the mouth. So we're going to put these in. I'm also going to chop up a couple of onions. Again, this is a seasoning day. Will these pieces of ham bring off meat? Of course they will. But right now, I'm concerned with them just seasoning the broth. Tomorrow, I'm going to make beans in this pot. And so the meat that cooks off these ham shanks will go right in those beans. And this will be the most flavorful pot of lima beans you've ever seen. Alright, so again, in with some filtered water. And I get it really, 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 really full. But I do need to throw an onion in there, a couple onions. So there we go. That's full enough. And I'm just going to put it on low. And then I'll get the onions in there. And I'll turn it up to high for a little bit until it's good and bubbly and starts to cook. Because those ham shanks were frozen, they're going to have to thaw. It'll stay cold longer. So we'll kick it up here in a little bit and let it get going. But isn't it beautiful? I mean, this is just gorgeous. This is going to make the most delicious pot of lima beans tomorrow. After these ham shanks cook down and we get all that goodness and nutrition, all that protein, pull all that meat off of those bones. Ooh, child, my husband is going to be a happy man. He's been asking me for a pot of butter beans. Yes. All right. There she is. A seasoning day. I'm not going to eat this today.